we are a convention for fans from all backgrounds, any fans of science fiction, fantasy, horror, gaming, art, and generally just anything geeky at all. That's been one of the fun parts, is expanding outside of like traditional fandom, and because we realize that like people have different kind of stuff they nerd out about, right? It could be history or science or fountain pens, whatever it is. The common thread is that there's a strong interest in something that you want to share with people. So that's the point of conventions in my book, but also Multiverse in particular, is let everybody get together in an environment where everybody feels welcomed and included, like genuinely included. And it happens every October, third weekend of every October. This year it's October 20th through 22nd in Atlanta, which I figure most people know. At the West End Atlanta, Perimeter North, all the stuff's at multiversecon.org.
For this episode, we welcome Jessica Nettles as an author who has passion for history, steampunk, and southern peculiarities. Her debut novel, The Children of Menlo Park, The Thrilling Supernatural Adventures of Kate Warren, Lady Detective, published by Falstaff Books, explores all three. We will also be talking to author Juliet Rose. Juliet is a multi-award-winning author in contemporary fiction, visionary suspense, and supernatural horror. She's adept at blending genres and challenging both herself and the reader to think outside their comfort zone by introducing new ideas into familiar tropes. Speaking of opportunities, the dealer hall is where it's at, and we'll tell you all about that tonight on the show. So, grab yourself a cocktail, sit back, relax, join the conversation as we turn the spotlight on the Multiverse Convention with your host, Joe Compton. Hey everybody, we are live yet again, another Friday, another Spotlight on Multiverse. I am very, very excited to have my guests tonight, and starting with the awesome Jessica Nettles, who's here. Hi Jessica, nice to have you here.
Nice for you to invite me in. I'm glad I'm here. Hey.
I gave you a little bit of an intro there, which I really, to be fair, I took off of the Multiverse site. But if you wanted to elaborate a little bit or talk a little bit more about yourself, this would be the moment. So please tell everybody a little bit more about yourself.
All right. So I am the author of The Children of Menlo Park. I am also the author of short stories as well. I write, like the introduction said, Southern peculiarities. I write Southern Gothic horror. You can find some of that in a few anthologies, including the anthology Lonely Hollows, which has just come out. I'm so excited about that. Lots of good authors from right around here in Georgia who are friends, some of which will be at Multiverse. I'm hoping to have some copies at Multiverse, by the way. Beautiful cover. We're real excited about that. I've also got another one, another story in an anthology that is coming out that's a Kickstarter project called League of Monsters, which is basically about the Universal Monsters kicking Nazi ass. So if you're really into that, yeah.
I don't know who wouldn't be. That's an awesome premise.
I got so excited. James Palmer is behind this particular anthology, and when he pitched it to us last spring, I was like one of the first ones that raised my hand and said, "Can I please be a part of this?" And he's like, "Why, yes, you can." So I wrote a real fun piece that involves the Gillman and the Wolfman and spies and Atlantis and a bunch of other things. It's one of those stories where I just kind of threw in a little bit of everything as I kind of thought about it, and kind of went crazy with the whole idea. And so it looks as though it's going to be really fun. I'm not really sure exactly when we're going to get actual real copies of it yet. So hopefully in the fall. I'm shooting for Multiverse because I want to bring some of those too.
Nice.
So
are you going to vend at Multiverse this year? I know we're going to talk about you guesting for the first time at Multiverse, but are you also vending at Multiverse this year?
I'm not. I don't tend to get a table if the Falstaff table is at a convention. I tend to let the mothership do its thing because it's just financially more sound for me to do it that way. And we'll probably
that
talk a
makes
little
sense.
bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not going to vend on my own this time because I don't feel like I have enough to make that work. Not yet. But I think doesn't Multiverse have a time for signing stuff and stuff?
Yeah.
I think y'all do.
They
Yeah,
have,
I
they
think
have a
you do.
shared author table too.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, you can put some books there, and the Multiverse store also will, uh, you know, for any guest and anybody there will you know uh, populate books often there too. So,
Very
and
cool.
of course, at any panel, hopefully somebody comes up to you after you do a panel and wants a book, and there you go. You can sell some books that way as well.
I'm all about that for sure.
I mean, so let's talk a little bit about the experience of Multiverse for you. I know you've seen it from the other side of a table for the most part recently, but you're going to be guest. You're a guest, a featured guest this year. You're going to be on some panels. You're going to do some of that fun stuff. Is there something you particularly you have your eye on? Is there a specific track you're hoping to get some? Because this is your chance. You can pitch to all the track
Oh
directors.
wow.
We make sure they watch it. So if
Wow.
you want to pitch something, now's a good time to do it if you're interested. So I
Oh
mean, you don't
wow.
have to,
Okay.
but I'm just saying, you know, it's
Okay.
out there.
So yeah, I mean, I've got so many interests.
I
This is
know
a crazy one.
you could
So
do a
yeah.
lot.
Oh yeah, I really could. It's kind of I'm kind of like this spastic nerd. So
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
speculative fiction
I,
doesn't even begin to blanket what you can do.
Star Trek, I'm all for that.
Yeah,
Especially original series. I'm really into the new Strange New Worlds series. Yeah, I have a whole new thing for Chris Pike, and I have bitterness towards Jim Kirk. He tore out that beautiful captain's area and put in that junky thing and tore out Captain Pike's fireplace. What the hell? So yeah, I'm really into Trek. Really into Doctor Who, especially Classic Who. So throw me on a Doctor Who panel. I will talk about Classic Who until I bore your brains out. Okay, I can tell you probably more about Autons than should be allowed. Um, crafting. I'm into talking
Anita's with
about
you. She loves Strange New
crafting.
World.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. It's what Star Trek should be. It really is. After the first episode, I kind of
Yeah,
left.
I've heard people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
Um,
heard there's been some romanticism behind it. Yeah,
it's it's truly beautiful. So yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I can do historical fiction, and fantasy and what if kind of things, comic books. God, Darren Kennedy and me go to it just at dinner talking about comic books. That man knows more about comic books. Oh my God. Um, so
He's
yeah,
a
I
big
mean,
Doctor Who guy too.
oh, I know, I know. So yeah, I mean, there's so much that I
Well, there you
am interested
go.
in.
If,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
so if
hard
you're,
to know what to talk about, you know,
yeah,
because I get
absolutely.
excited about everything.
That's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
you could even talk about writing. I mean,
Oh yeah.
and the writer's track as well. But I think one of the cool things about the panels at Multiverse that I think we've talked about on the show before a lot is the idea that just because you're not on the panel doesn't mean you can't be a part of the panel either. So, you know, have you experienced that? Have you gone to some panels
Oh,
in the ones you've attended and kind of experienced the kind of camaraderie that is kind of become like a sewing circle versus more of a lecture
I mean,
panel?
yeah. Yeah, I attended some last year where it felt more like we were all just hanging out
Yeah,
and learning from each other and looking at hey, look what I've got. Oh yeah, let's talk about this. And that's something I really love, and I love the camaraderie in general, even if I'm not in a panel, even if we're not, in a meeting room doing something, just sometimes it's just a bunch of us just sitting around, just talking. And we'll see somebody that we haven't seen, in a while, and they'll pop up and we're suddenly like all hugging and going, "Oh my God, we're so glad to see you." And it's like family reunion time, which I just love.
for sure.
And there's so many people I have met going, especially to Multiverse, who have become, surrogate family.
Yeah.
I enjoy seeing them. I enjoy hanging out with them. I learn stuff from them, and it's a beautiful thing. And I've been going to Multiverse since its inception. I went to it the first year, not knowing what I was getting into. I went because my publisher was there, or the guy who would become my publisher, John Hartness, and he's like, "I've got a table, and I need some help loading in." And I'm like, "Well, sure, I'll go," because I got a free ticket. And so I went and helped load in, and then hung out, and then ended up staying the night because I got a migraine, which was weird. It rained, I got a migraine, and ended up having a great time. And I felt I got to that point of feeling like I belonged there. It was great. And then I'm like, I want to do this again. So yeah.
Yeah, it has that effect on a lot of people, that in that respect. It does that magic for that. And speaking of Mr. Hartness, we were talking off air about why, you've manned the table now, the fall staff table, for a couple times here at Multiverse, and beyond Multiverse, obviously at other cons, and kind of explain your thought process behind why you want to man those tables, because I thought it was very interesting what you were talking about, in terms of learning from John, and how to do
Right.
this.
Well, when I first started all this, I really had no idea what to do. And I think most authors are that way.
Sure.
You come on the scene, you're clueless.
Yeah.
There's no way you can know. And so my thought was I'd watched John and talked to him just enough to know the man kind of knows what he's doing. He's like one of the best. And so if you're going to learn how to do this, one of the things you've got to do is be able to man a table and do it successfully. Successful meaning actually move books
Yeah.
and actually make contact with the person on the other side of the table in a meaningful way. And John does it better than probably anybody I've ever seen. And all of the people who I know, all of the authors who I know or am close to who do it well, learned from John, from sitting behind the table. At some point, they sat with him. And so I figured out pretty early on, after I realized that he was going to publish me, that I needed to learn from John. And so I would volunteer, and I kind of like quietly edged my way into becoming one of his Atlanta people. So when he comes to Atlanta, I was going to be behind that table. And I would sit there and I would watch him, and I would learn what kind of things did he do. Now, I can't do full on John Hartness because nobody can. There's only one man in the entire universe that can look across the table at somebody and say, "Buy my shit."
Yeah.
And they will indeed buy his shit and
Yeah.
buy all of his shit.
Yeah.
But
That's one of the things you didn't know you needed.
yeah, he makes you think about things, and just he makes you understand how to communicate better. I'm not an innately a person that is a salesperson.
Yeah.
I'm just not. But he's taught me ways to handle that, and I don't know that I would do nearly as well. I've started going out on my own now and doing my tables, and I sell because of what I have learned from him. and that is the
Yeah.
truth.
Let's talk a little bit about your stuff too. I'm fascinated because I remember when I went out with one book, right? And I mean, you have anthologies and stuff that you can pitch as well, but I remember going to conventions and going to festivals and selling just the one book, and remembering that experience, remembering what I've been told that the conventional wisdom is to never do that, or at least to do it in small scale, right? Not try to attempt bigger cons with that idea. And I remember like saying, I've always been the guy that says, "Oh yeah, well watch me, I'll do it," right? And I remember doing it, and so I'm curious what your experience has been like. I'm sure you've heard that. I'm sure that John is
Oh
not the
yeah.
person telling you that, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who have told you that before, and I'm sure you hear, "Oh, you have more than one book," oftentimes at your table too. But I'm curious how it's been for you with the one book.
Well, the thing that has helped me, because I've been at Multiverse, I've been at Jordan Con. I've not had my own table. I
Mm,
always, if I'm at one of those kind of things, I'm going to be with the mothership because Falstaff's going to be there. There's no
yes,
sense in me buying a table.
yeah.
And
Why spend
the
money when you
experience,
don't have to?
exactly. So
Yeah,
I have the force of the mothership behind me, and with that one book, and it makes a difference because I don't have just my voice going, "Hey, buy my book." I
yeah.
have I have me pushing it. I have if Vicky's there, Vicky's going to push the book. Vicky is like one of my big cheerleaders, and I mean,
That's awesome.
if I can't sell it, Vicky's going to sell that damn book. Um, John's there selling it, so I have more voices. I think it also helps that I've built a network. I know that sounds weird. Maybe it doesn't sound
No.
weird, but I've built a network of people who actually like me. I am not really sure how I've done that, except that people are kind. Um, but actually, people like my book, and so there's a lot of word of mouth. Um, there's a part of me that's still very stunned about this. Um, but people talk about the book and they'll send people over, it's like, so there's a lot of, there's like this net. I feel like I'm playing with a net,
Yeah,
especially at my Atlanta cons. I have
yeah.
not ventured much past Atlanta yet.
Mm,
Um, my goal for next year is to actually go to Con Carolinas
nice.
and try up there and kind of spread my net a little bit.
Nice.
And, but Atlanta's been very kind in that I've been able to have like kind of a net underneath me. I have been doing in this spring, I've done a couple of gigs where it's been like I had a signing a few weeks ago in Ackworth at a small bookstore where it was just me. And that was kind of cool. I
Nice.
did better than I thought I would. Um, and I have to think it was just me. Either it was just great luck or there was just, I don't know. I don't know what the magic formula was there, but I did pretty well. I've got a gig coming up in at the end of September in Ackworth, which is going to be just me. We'll see how we go.
Mm,
And then I did the Renaissance Festival, but I was with 8 other authors, some of which were Falstaff authors. So we were all pushing each other, right?
mm.
And we had the benefit of having Sherilyn Kenyon with us, which I think really is what helped all of us.
Yeah,
You've
I would
got New
imagine.
York Times lady over here on the corner, and you literally have people coming down the hill and seeing her banner, and their eyes getting this big around,
Yeah.
and they come, and suddenly they're buying our books too, and we're all like, we're all clustered together going, that's the goal there. That's the goal right there is for people
Yeah.
to come down the hill and recognize us. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so far it's not been. I've not had anybody run away from my book. Let me just put it that way. I guess I'm lucky. I don't know. It's a beautiful book, so I guess I have that going for me.
Yeah, I was just thinking too. Whoever gets put next to Rebecca Roanhorse's stuff is going to be the luckiest person at Multiverse this year
Oh
because
God, yeah.
there's so many people who are looking forward to like meeting her and getting things signed for her. So that person's going to get a lot of that attrition that's going to be there. So luck is the luck of the draw on that one, I guess.
Absolutely.
But did you read? Did you do readings at your signing, or was it just you just there and
I
signing the book?
I was just there signing. I didn't even read, which
Interesting.
really surprised me because
Yeah,
usually the
that
reading is
usually,
what pulls people in.
yeah,
But
exactly.
I didn't do a reading. Um, it was just really informal. It was me and a table and a couple of friends and the
Hmm.
books. And I had children and I had Lonely Hollows at that point. And I had prayed. I kind of prayed to the book gods, please let Lonely Hollows come in time, and it did. And
Nice.
because I'm really proud of that story. I love this all of the stories in that book because there's so many. I have so many friends that are in that book. So,
Hmm.
um, but I was really wanting to like test the waters with that book, and so it sold pretty well, and children sold well. So, and I did nothing. Basically, I just sat there at the table and looked cute and did my thing, and it worked. I don't know what the magic is. I hope I can
Well,
duplicate.
I mean, just the few times that we've spoken, I already know that you're one of those people that I've seen you at the table too, and you do very well actually. So
Thank you.
I mean, yeah, I I'm curious about Menlo Park in because you're somebody who, like we've been talking about, has a lot of knowledge in a lot of things. This
Right.
book, this book really delves deep into a lot of subject matter, and especially on the paranormal side of things in that respect too. And how much of did you still have to do a lot of research, or were you pulling from a lot because you've had experiences of this kind? And I'm kind of curious if you drew on that more, or was there a lot of research to be done
Uh,
in what you were putting together?
okay, so with the supernatural part, I made up a lot of stuff. Um,
Okay, fair enough. Which you can do.
I mean, some of it, it's like some of it is stuff that is based on belief,
Hmm.
and what different people think. And then
Sure.
some of it, I'm like, I just made some just general decisions about how am I going to build this supernatural stuff in this world,
Yeah.
and how is this going to actually work? And the crazy thing is I'm still building out the world,
Hmm.
so there's still decisions I'm making, and there's still things that I only sort of know. I only kind of know how things work, and I'm writing the second book now, so I'm really learning even more about Kate's outside.
Mm,
Um, there's more to know about it. So
mm,
a lot of stuff I based loosely on belief structures that are already in place,
mm,
and then I kind of fiddled with them and kind of went my own way. Um, so I think that's why there's some places where it looks like I might have researched something, and I kind of did. It's like with Deborah's magic, I did research
mm,
because I wanted to do it right
mm-hmm.
because she comes from a specific culture, and I wasn't about to go and cross and step on people's toes. I was
Sure.
terrified about that. And so with her magic and with the music that she does and with the tarot, I did do research because that's something that I'm not familiar with. But I did do research with that. I did research with a lot of the historical things. So the things like the hotel Colorado. That was the Antlers is a real place. I got really excited when I discovered it because it really was as cool as I described it. There were
I've seen it.
very
I've
few.
never been in it. I've seen it in person. I've never been in it, but I've seen it.
Yeah.
So,
The original building, is actually a little different, and the interior, I kind of made up stuff about the interior because I couldn't find photographs. So what I did is I read some descriptions and imagined a few things, and then added the airship port on top of it, because obviously that's not real.
Right.
But the thing that I had the most fun with as far as the research was I would do the historical research, and then I'd find holes in the research. It's like, okay, so there's this gap here. Okay.
That is awesome.
There's this gap. We've got to fill this gap. Now, what kind of weird crap can I fill this gap with? And how can I play with this? So there's like weird, that's where Mr. Harry came from, because there was this thing I was reading, and there's a certain point in Edison's history where he had this assistant, and then suddenly he disappears from the records, and I'm like, and his name was Mr. Harry, and there was nothing else about him. I'm like, what the hell? And so I'm like, well, we're gonna just make up some shit about him, and I did. And then I started learning some things about how some of the Japanese shogun were coming over to Mexico prior to the Civil War, and during the Civil War, doing some stuff in Mexico. And I'm like, we can play with that too. Oh yeah, historical gaps are the best. If you are a writer, that is where you want to play, man.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
that's where you could really get into the sandbox deeply.
Oh yeah. So that's where Sho comes from. He comes from I've got this whole backstory. Y'all have no idea about Sho yet. Let me tell you. When you guys finally find out about Sho, I get excited about him because, oh my gosh, he's I can't tell you because it's a secret, but he's got an amazing history, and it's connected back to that whole thing with the shoguns coming over and fight. They actually fought in Mexico, which is crazy. You're like, how did that happen? But it happened. So yeah, so I did a little research, and because I'm a historical, once again, another thing to nerd out about. I love history. I found history, and then I found the holes and started playing.
How much of the Pinkerton stuff did you know up front?
Not a lot. I knew a little. I knew enough to know, hey, they might be fun to use, and that's why I originally picked it. It's like, oh, so I need some detectives. Pinkertons, okay. And then I found Kate, and I'm like, female detective, oh yeah. And then I found out about her history, and then I'm like, okay, so I've got to use her. And then I found out. At first, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to use her because she died. She died, and historical Kate died about 20 years before this story happens. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And then I'm like, it's your story. You're twisting history anyway. Do it. So my Kate died. Her timeline is a little different than actual history. And what I've learned is that the America that I'm playing with, it's on a slightly different timeline than our America, I think. But yeah, she died of tuberculosis. And there's a whole thing about how Alan Pinkerton sat at her side, the whole time, and she was his favorite detective, and there's hints about their relationship, and so I'm kind of fiddling around with that a little bit. We're going to see where that goes. Nice. I've also continued to dig I have definite strong feelings about Alan Pinkerton. I wish I could say they were good. They are not.
No.
I think we're going to learn some stuff about him as we continue the series.
That's awesome. I'm also curious. Another thing that is often said to authors, especially young authors and starting out authors, is you should read more. But you're a voracious reader, so I'm curious how much of that helped you settle in as an author. Do you feel like that was a real benefit for you as somebody who knows how story is structured, because you've read so many good ones that you really that was going to be an easier part for you?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think so. I think that reading is definitely something that has helped me. I've been reading since I don't remember when I started reading, but story's always been an important part of my life. It's like breathing. So yeah, reading and continuing to read has impacted how I know how to put the story together. How do I know how something should flow? Now, do all my stories flow right? No.
Yeah.
I still hit that wall where it isn't working. It isn't working. It isn't
Sure.
working. But I know how
it's much harder to do it than actually, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback, right? It's not, or backseat drive. It's easy to do that, but once you're in the driver's seat, it's a lot different.
Oh yeah, and there are moments where it's so easy, and then other moments where you're just like, okay, I don't know if this is about half the time, I don't know if something's working or not. That's why I have readers. It's like I'm working on the new novels, so I've got like the first 8 or 9 chapters now, and I ran it by my readers recently, going, I don't know if this is working. And all the demons rise in your head, and they start chattering, going, "It's not working. It's not working." And so I'm running it by my readers, and they're like, "It's brilliant." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll take that." I still don't think it's brilliant, but so I'm writing. But yeah, reading really.
You'll just have to get over it.
Yeah. The demons will have to go away, but the reading I think it makes a huge difference. I'm baffled by people that say that they write but don't read. It's like I've got so many. I've read for so many years, and I've got so many influences, and my influences keep growing. Whether it's Ray Bradbury, who's influenced me since I was 11, and I still herald him as one of my all-time favorites. Who has taught me many, many, many things, and I still go back to him. When I get lost, I go back to Bradbury. Or if I'm looking at newer authors, like Mary Robinette Kowal, who's one of my current favorites. Nice. Or Shirley Jackson, who has taught me a lot about how to do the slow creep, which is how I write horror. You have to read. If you're writing and you're not reading, you have to. Yeah.
And you all have to read Children of Menlo Park. Everybody, go get it. I'll invoke my deepest heartness here and say, everybody, go get this book. Why aren't you reading it? You should be reading it. And Jessica, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to me. I really appreciate it. It's always nice to talk to you. And when the second one comes out, come and see me. We'll talk some more. We'll get really deep into all of this and the interesting thing about ghosts and everything like that.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man.
All right. We'll be right back, everybody. We've got Julia Rose with us and then but first we're going to hear from one of our sponsors, one of the Multiverse sponsors, and then we'll be right back.
Dear reader, welcome to this collection of stories where villains arise. And who doesn't like hidden surprises? We've all given that handle a twist and a turn. Each of these stories likewise has a twist. It could be quirky, it could be fun. It also may be very, very horrifying. But it's definitely not what you'd expect. These stories have villains who arise from conspiracy theories, some from urban legends, others from realms of spirits, and a few from the depths of your very soul. Wherever these villains may be hiding, I hope you enjoyed discovering them. And as you turn each page in anticipation of the villain arising, that aha moment just might make you jump. Check out Hidden Villains Arise, now available on paperback and Kindle from the folks at Inked Publishing.
And we're back, and I have the awesome Juliet Lewis, or just Juliet Rose with me. Sorry, faux pas there. But thank you so much for being here and joining me tonight. It's nice to meet you, and welcome to our show.
Thank you, Joe. And you're not the first person to introduce me as Juliet Lewis, so apparently that's like a thing.
Well, that was a big faux pas too. I apologize. But tell everybody a little bit about yourself. I did a little intro at the beginning that you probably didn't see, but just give everybody some insight into who you are and what you write.
Sure. So I am a cross-genre author, so I kind of write a little bit of everything. I decided when I kind of came back to writing recently in the last couple of years that I didn't want to put boundaries on myself, and I just wanted to write what I wanted to write. And so I have been. So I've written anything from contemporary fiction to supernatural to horror. I'm dabbling in a little sci-fi right now as well. So
nice.
kind of all over the place, but it works.
That's awesome. And Jessica wanted to say hello.
Hey, Jessica.
Talk a little bit about your experiences at Multiverse. How have you found it? What is it about Multiverse that that you want to be a part of it?
Yeah, so this will be my first year at Multiverse. I know Jessica and I know some other people that have gone to Multiverse, and they posted about it last year, and I was like, what is this? I need to be a part of this. And so I immediately liked the page so that I could, follow it. And, honestly, for me, because I do not fit into like a genre and I tend to kind of float in this like other world, I felt like it was a good fit for me. Because my stories, not only, do I write horror and say I write paranormal, they sometimes meld. So I have all these different kind of like universes coming together. And actually my next book that comes out literally gets into multi-universes. So I thought, this is right up my alley.
Is there a particular subject matter or a particular panel that you would be looking forward to being a part of?
I've been doing a lot of research for this book on parallel universes and nice. Like the multiverse and timelines and planes of existence and kind of time travel. So like anything to do with that. I think I've watched so many videos now. I've watched Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about like this kind of reality of like time travel. And it's super fascinating. Like I feel like when I was in school, I never really kind of got physics and like reading different things and watching these, I'm like, wow, this is actually really fascinating. I wish I had appreciated it more when I was younger.
Nice. Well, hopefully you'll get the opportunity to experience that then and to talk about that. You mentioned experiences, and I think what's very interesting in learning about you and and doing the research for this show to talk to you today, you've had a lot of life experience, and a lot of things happen, and we don't have to go through all that stuff. And I just want to put it out there. It's just experience, and But I'm curious how much of that has shaped you as a writer. Do you lean on a lot of that? Do you feel like life experience is a super important element to you being successful as a writer?
For me, yes. And I'm not afraid to talk about any of my life experiences. I live them. So they're just part of who I am. I do think those have really helped me to, especially with character development, it really helped me to like put myself in the shoes of my characters, in that, like, even if I haven't gone through specifically what I'm putting them through, I've been through things and I know what some of those emotions are, or kind of the outcomes were. So, I find like it really helps for me to be able to like put myself into different situations. And then sometimes they're direct situations. I'm writing about something I have gone through. And so, that's tough, but I know that people need to hear about it, and not just in a nonfiction sense. They need to hear about it in a fiction sense so they can relate to a character without feeling so raw.
Yeah. It's an indirect relation, right? You feel kind of like it's a skew, but it actually brings you towards the character if you have some kind of relatability toward it, right? So.
Absolutely. I think it's actually easier because I think that when we've been through something, if we're reading about somebody going through it, or we're kind of trying to experience it, like I said, in that nonfiction sense, we tend to shy away from it. Where like when a character goes through it, we relate, and we open up more to the experience because we're not having to go through it again. We're not putting ourselves through it twice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Anita says that I didn't appreciate physics either until I read one of Stephen Hawking's books.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's. I don't. Have you ever seen the Neil deGrasse Tyson interview with Stephen Hawking? Have you seen that one?
I haven't. I've watched a lot of interviews with him, but not that specific one.
Oh, you should. That's such a fascinating conversation.
I'll have to watch that
all day long. Yeah, it's on YouTube. You could look it up. It's pretty easy to find. But yeah, that's a really good one. So,
I bet. Yeah.
I also, with your experiences, you experienced mortality really early on in your life too. So do you feel like that is helpful for kind of the rounding out what is ultimately going to happen? And I'm not saying that everybody dies in your books or that you kill a lot of people in your books, but I'm sure it happens. I'm curious how much of that factored into how does that help you shape a character in a lot of respects?
For sure. And we ultimately all will face mortality. I mean, that's anybody, is going to face it through someone that they love, or eventually their own. And so I definitely, and I do kill off a lot of characters. I try to do it in the most compassionate way possible, but it happens. And, I do think that my experiences, I lost my mother when I was 11, and I lost a child to cancer when I was a young mother. So I've definitely faced that. I think that when I'm adding layers to my story, I want to make sure that that experience is included, because so many people face that they've lost their mother, or they've lost their spouse, or they've lost, a child. And, sometimes they feel like it's a world that doesn't want to hear about it. So I want to make sure I write about it, because it's like, I want these subjects to not be taboo. I want people to be able to experience those. And I do really get in a lot of times into grief in my stories. I want to show that when someone does die, unless they're a bad person, whatever they're off. But like, if it's somebody in the story that you're connected to, I want to show the other characters dealing with that emotion.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah. And again, it's another thing that people can be relatable to, right? And kind of helps your character get that relatability factor that can be elusive for if somebody doesn't connect to a story.
For sure.
Sometimes they just connect to the character.
For sure. And I want to show it in the ugly way that it can be as well. Not just like, oh, this person's sad and they're grieving. I want to show grief as it really is, which is sometimes mean and nasty. And you're not fair to other people because you're going through something. So I want to show those different elements of how it really impacts a person and how they might treat others through their own grief.
The other fascinating thing I found out about you, which I think I really, this is awesome. This is an awesome thing to find out about somebody. But as of what we're talking, you've won 32 awards as an independent author, as an indie author, and that is oftentimes people say don't ever expect awards or anything because there's no awards for indie authors. Well, you're disproving that theory to the tenfold. Talk a little bit about what that means to you and how much that has helped you in terms of just feeling like I'm an author.
Yeah, so my experience as an author, I came back to this later in life. I had been an author when I was younger, then I came back to it later in life. And I went the traditional route initially, and I sent off my manuscripts, and I was offered contracts. I actually had 3 different publishers offer me contracts, and every single one of them fell apart. It was just one of those, like, one folded, one had, like, he just quit responding, one just had a terrible contract. And so I was like, I really think that I need to do this myself. Like, I think I've put enough time in. I'm getting older. I don't want to spend the rest of my life chasing this down. But for me, it was like my own kind of vetting process was to enter these awards contests, to kind of prove to myself that, yes, I should be doing this. I guess it's imposter syndrome. I really just needed to prove to myself that I could. And I started winning awards pretty much right off the bat. And then it became a vetting process for other people to say, indie authors are putting out a really good product. Like, we are just as valid. We are putting out just as high quality, if not sometimes higher quality, because we have that kind of stigma that we're fighting against. We're really making sure we're checking all those, like, dots and those cross T's, and really putting into our covers. And so it did kind of become that secondary vetting process to say to people, I've won 32 awards. All of my books that I've entered at this point have won awards. Every book's won at least 4 awards that's been entered into a contest. And I really want to do that kind of across the board for indie authors. So when I'm sitting at a table and somebody comes up and goes, "Oh, are you self-published?" I am. Yeah. 132 awards. I think I've proven that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, 4 awards on every book. That's you'd be lucky you get 1 sometimes. So that's pretty amazing. Yeah, what if an indie author approaches you and talks to you about the awards, what are some advice that you give them? What are some things you would say to somebody about the award aspect of this? Because, I mean, there is still pretentious nature behind awards in a lot of respect, but it is also, something to validate,
Yeah, I think, honestly, I think when people are entering awards, if they're interested in awards contests, they have to determine why they are. Because you don't win them all, and there are entry fees, so you are putting yourself out there. One thing I tell people is just to really make sure that whatever they're going to enter is up to par. So go into the library, go into a bookstore, pull books off the shelf, and really look at ones that have won awards, and look at covers, and look at formatting, and look at editing, because those are the things that'll quickly knock you out of the running with an awards contest. And so start with that. Just really have put the work in. Really make sure what you're entering is going to be up to par, and then don't be disappointed. I've talked to different awards contests now, and they said these past couple of years have been the most books ever entered. Like the one said they actually had to delay their announcement because they're like, there were so many more than we expected and we couldn't keep up. So, like, don't feel disappointed in that, if you don't place, don't feel disappointed. Still do that, and maybe take that as a lesson. And if you do place, it is a validation. It can definitely come across pretentious, and some people don't enter at all, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But, like, if you do enter and you do place, take pride in that. You worked really hard and you were competing against other, authors. And just keep going at it. I mean, like I said, again, I initially did the awards for me. I wasn't even trying to say, hey, I have an award-winning book. I was trying to say to myself, should I be doing this? Am I putting out a quality product? And then it became something else because people did take notice. Like, people, if I have a sign that says I've won 32 awards, they're like, oh, and they might actually stop and pick up a book where maybe before they were like, oh, it's an indie author, I'm just going to keep moving. It is something at least to catch people's eye. There is something, like, I put them on the covers. So it does at least catch people's eyes. And it gets me kind of a step further in the process with the reader, because I have you have so many readers that think indie books aren't good. And I hear it all the time. I'm part of different, book groups online, and you'll hear people say, oh, just indie books. And so we are really fighting an uphill battle. And I'm telling you, I read both. I know you're talking to Jessica about being a voracious reader. Well, I am, and I read everything. I read indie, I read mainstream. And I'll tell you what, I've been way more impressed with the indie books I've been reading over the last couple of years than the mainstream books. Whether it's, the story itself, it's editing, it's the covers. I've just really found amazing indie books out there. And I can't really say the same for traditionally published books. And I'm not saying there aren't out there, but we're definitely putting out product that's giving them a run for their money.
Yeah. I mean, I started a whole network about it, so yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, the great thing about the con scene is that readers are open to indie authors, so they can
100%.
be. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, and even readers now. I mean,
yeah.
years ago. I mean,
It's yeah.
20 years
It's
ago,
just a
if you
big
said
push.
you were published, people would just run screaming. Like now they actually still stop. So it's the shift is really happening, I think, in people's minds to be more open to indie.
Yeah, when I started back in way back in the day, it was a stigma. It was just something that you didn't do unless you were a self-help person or somebody promoting a textbook. If you self-published, it's because you were rejected by everybody, and that's how everybody marketed it and played off of it, and kind of buried you behind it. And so and then of course Amazon changed the entire game. But yeah, so I, like you, I went the traditional route to start with, and boy was I disappointed in that aspect of my life. But I mean, I'm so glad that we have this opportunity.
Absolutely, yeah.
I, are you going to vend at Multiverse as well? Are you planning on selling some books while you're there?
Yeah. I'm going to bring my books, and I actually the books I have a book coming out next month, which I'm kind of like debuting at Multiverse.
Nice.
That's my kind of time travel paranormal book. I felt like that was a good one to introduce there. So yeah, I'll be selling as well.
Yeah, you'll sell quite a few of those copies. Everybody who watches this who will be like, oh, I'm going to write that one down. Do you have the title? Can you give everybody the title?
Yeah, it's called In Dreams We Fly.
There you go, everybody. So look for that one. Find Julia and get the whole package. But definitely look for that one as well. But yeah, so you've bended at a lot of places. You've done some shows and done some tables and things like that. Are you finding being a multi-genre author is helpful? Do you feel like it is only in certain situations is it helpful? Because again, it's funny. These shows tend to run a theme, and the both of you, between you and Jessica, have all these things that you're told not to do as writers, oftentimes, and yet you have done it with a modicum of success. So I'm very curious about. I'm sure you've heard that, right? You're alienating your readers. You're not building a fan base by going multi-genre. But I think a lot of things nowadays are multi-genre anyway. But
I think so too. And people they'll say, well, use a different name if you're doing a different genre. And that's just like for an author, that would be like a logistical nightmare if you do multiple genres. So I just decided I was going to use my name, and then I had readers, and what I did was I had them read different books, and I said, so do you feel like as a reader you would connect to having these available under my same name? And what everybody said was the books and the genres are different, but your writing is you, so like it's still you, like you have a style, you have a way that you do things, so I would rather just know that it's you and be able to buy from you. And I go pretty dramatic. I mean, I have like contemporary fiction all the way to horror, and I haven't ever run into an issue where somebody was like, oh, I'm not comfortable with that. I actually find it shows because I have so many different genres. If somebody comes up to my table, I can almost always meet their need. So if they're like, well, I kind of like romance, I'm like, I got that. So like, I like horror, I'm like, I have that too. So like I'm able to really kind of meet most people. And so I feel like I do sell more books. And I actually started watching like, I'm really into like kind of like the psychology of everything. And I would go to events and I would watch authors that said he had one book or one genre. And what would happen is somebody would walk up to the table and they would say, oh, do you say like horror? And they would say no. And they'd be like, oh, okay. Like I don't have anything else to say to you, but like, and so what happened was I found like if people walked up to me and I would say, what do you like? And they'd be like, I like this or that. I could almost always point them to something. And so I would usually make that sale then because I had something to offer them, unless it was just like, I mean, I don't have Christian fiction and I don't have like, Amish fiction or, really specific things. But if it's kind of within like the general type of genres, I always had something I could direct them to. So I feel like it helps. I've never had a negative reaction because I write multiple genres. I've always had positive reactions, but I'll have people like, I'm part of a pretty big horror group online, and there are people in there that will only read horror. And so they'll say, oh, what are your other books about? And I'm like, they're not horror. This is what they are. And they'll be like, oh, okay. But some of them will be like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and try because I really like your writing. And so they might be like, yeah, I love your horror book more, but I definitely still like this book too.
Yeah.
So I think I don't want to box myself in. Again, like we all eventually die. Like chase that dream, and whatever it takes, just do it, because you will find your readers. You just will. The people that, I'm a mood reader. I don't read just one genre. I read multiple genres. I am currently reading a fantasy sci-fi and a African, like, kind of folklore book at the same time, and that's how most people are. Most people don't really lock in. And if they do, I might still have something for them.
Yeah. And you're always surprised about who is your reader too, right? It's like that you never would suspect that person would love contemporary romance, but all of a sudden here's somebody, who doesn't look like the part, and yet they love it, right? And
100%.
It's like one of those weird things. And so you can never discount anybody for anything, Yeah,
absolutely. Sometimes people walk up and I'll think, I'm not sure they're my reader, but I had to stop doing that, because sometimes people you think are your reader, they're just like, they pass right on by. You say, this is what my book's about. And they're like, yeah, not interested. And then somebody who walks up, you're thinking, I don't think you're going to like what I have. And then they're like, I'm buying that one. I'm like, right on. I'll take that.
I particularly learned that about young kids because, I really, like, I wrote something very dark, and it was a crime thriller. And I was like, anybody over, I fell into that trap where it's like, anybody over 15, I really shouldn't sell this book to. But I was finding, like, I had a young lady who wanted to buy both of the books that I had, and she was probably 10, 11 years old.
Yep.
And I said, well, if your mom says it's okay, I'm okay with it. And she brought her mom over, and she goes, oh yeah, she reads crap like that all the time. So Go ahead and sell it to her. And it's just like, you're surprised by that. And it was a real eye-opening life lesson for me in that, just, don't, obviously I probably don't want to sell to a toddler, but, but you know what I mean? It's just, you get this idea that you should be responsible for what people are reading, and you're gatekeeping at that point, and you shouldn't be. You should just let people read what they want to read.
Absolutely.
Maybe they just buy it and don't even read it, but hey, you made a sale, so.
Yeah. And what I do kind of, I guess, for the kid part of it, because I do have kids that often come up, and like teenagers that often come up and look at my books. I have like an LGBTQ book, and I get a lot of teenagers who come up and look at that one. So I keep like a little card that has some reviews, and it just has some of like the adult content thing on there. So I feel like I'm kind of protecting, I guess, myself in that way, because it's in front of the book, and I'll say, hey, here's a little card here. It tells you what category this book's in. It has some reviews, and it has kind of some of the content warnings as well. And so they read it, and if they still choose to buy it, or their parents still choose to buy it, I've covered myself on that. I've let them know there's sexual content, or there's adult content, or this, like, you can only do so much, and you don't want to talk somebody out of a sale. You don't want to be like, no, don't buy it. Like, you have to trust that they know what they're doing. And so, like I said, I give enough of a warning in the cards so that I'm letting them know, yes, there's adult sexual content or drug use in this book, whatever it is. And then it's hands off for me. If they're like, I want to buy it, then they want to buy it. We're good.
Yeah, that's smart. I love that. Jessica says she's going to buy a copy of your book. So there you go. You got a sale already at Multiverse. Well, I look, when the book comes out, come talk to me some more. Well, I'd love to delve deep into your worlds and talk a lot more about what you write and how you write it a little bit more. If you're game for that, I would love to have you on for more of that. And thank you so much for being a part of this. I really appreciate it. I love when first time multiverses come on here, because I think next year when we talk about multiverse, you'll have a different take on it, and that'll be awesome to have that experience.
It will be. Yeah, there's, I think, a sense of community that comes along with that I'm very excited to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we were just talking, everybody, about how to buy stuff. Well, you're in luck, because this week, my little spotlight on the Multiverse Convention, Convention has a little connection to buying. So enjoy this little clip, and then I'll be back to wrap things up. Thank you, Julia, for being with us. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, sorry. Oops.
No, you're okay.
Sorry. I apologize. Jeez, I really got you on both ends. I got you at the beginning and got you at the end. I'm so sorry about that. Thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.
You too.
All right.
And now, reason 1112 to attend Multiverse. The Dealer's Room. The Dealer's Room is a collection of collectibles, books, comics, art, games, clothes, toys, cosplay items, jewelry, handmade crafts, and sundries. Shop to your heart's content in the Multiverse Dealer's Room. Creators, craftspeople, and vendors from all over gather in the Dealer's Hall and Creators Alley to showcase the coolest sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and pop culture themed merchandise around. What are you waiting for? Join us today. Go to multiversecon.org and register to become a member of the Multiverse.
I speak from experience in saying two things that you need to remember if you're going to come to Multiverse. And again, I say this every week at the end of the show, but if that's not a reason to come, I don't know what is, because that's a great reason to come. You're going to get a lot of stuff. There's so much good stuff there. I'm going to say this really, as advice for you. If you do come and you're not prepared for it, make sure you have enough room in your suitcase. Leave a little extra room in the suitcase if you're traveling and coming here and you're staying at the hotel. Make a little extra room. Don't bring that 7th shirt. Just, you'll be okay with 5, I promise. And and then leave a little extra room so that you could take some stuff back, and make sure you have a nice budget set for yourself so that you know where your limits are. I mean, we're all going to go over them, but hey, at least you tried. At least you try to set a limit, right? And in doing so, you'll be able to, come away with some really great stuff. A lot of stuff, real good affordability there. There's a lot of really great stuff there. And we have a lot of great stuff still to come on our spotlights here. We're not done. We've got we've got another spotlight coming up on the 21st. We're going to take a little break next week. And then on the 21st, I'm going to bring over Misty Massey to talk to me for the whole hour. We're going to spend some time with Misty and talk, all the things Multiverse and about everything that she's doing in Falstaff and everything that she's doing out there in the world and in writing. And so I'm real excited about that special episode. And then we're going to be back in August with more Multiverse spotlights and more guests and having the opportunity to talk to a lot more people. I'm real excited about that as well. So as you know, it's always time to go indie now. So join us for all of that, and we will see you all on the other side. Thank you so much for being here.